Let me ask you a question. Do you own money, or does money own you? Pause for a moment. Think about it. Most people will quickly say, of course I own my money. I work hard for it. But look at the truth of our lives. We wake up early because of money. We stay up late because of money. We argue, worry, and even lose sleep because of money. If that's the case, who is really the master? Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "Make money your servant, not your master." And that one statement can change your entire relationship with wealth. The problem, when money becomes the master. Imagine for a moment a person chained to a bossy master. Every decision they make, every step they take depends on whether the master approves or not. That's how many of us live with money. We let it control our happiness, our choices, even our dreams. We say, I'd love to start that business but I don't have the money. I'd love to travel but my bank account says no. Money becomes the prison guard. Now let's flip the picture. Imagine money not as your master but as your employee. Think of it like a loyal butler, ready to serve your vision. What happens? Suddenly, instead of saying, I can't afford it, you start asking, how can I make money work for me? That small shift in mindset is the beginning of financial freedom. Consider a hammer. A hammer is a powerful tool. In the right hands, it can build a home. But if you let it swing out of control, it can destroy. Money is the same. It's not good or bad. It simply amplifies the hand that holds it. A young man once told me, if only I had more money, I'd be free. But I looked at his life. He was drowning in debt, chasing every new gadget, working endless hours. I told him, if you can't master $1, you'll never master $1 million. True freedom doesn't start with abundance. It starts with control. Because money is not the goal. Money is the tool. Your real goal is life itself, joy, contribution, purpose. Think of the great minds of history. Did Martin Luther King Jr. march for money? Did Gandhi fast for money? Did Florence Nightingale heal for money? No. They let purpose lead and money followed. So the real question is this. Will you let money continue to be your master, whipping you into stress and fear? Or will you flip the roles and train money to serve your higher calling? Define your purpose. Money must serve a vision greater than itself. Budget with intention. Every dollar should have a job. Don't let it wander. Invest in growth. Not just in stocks or real estate but in yourself, your skills, your mind, your spirit. Detach from fear. Money comes and goes. But your value is eternal. Friends, money is powerful. But remember this. It was created by humans. It runs because of humans. It is nothing more than paper, numbers, and belief. So why let it rule your soul? Florence Scovel Shinn's wisdom rings louder than ever. Make money your servant, not your master. Live for purpose. Use money as a tool. And you will finally discover freedom. Thank you. Key takeaways. Money is a tool, not a master. Treat it as your servant. Financial freedom begins with mindset, not just more income. Purpose should lead your life. Money should follow. Control small amounts of money first before handling larger sums. Budget and invest with intention, making every dollar serve your vision. True wealth is not money, it's freedom, joy, and contribution. When you were a child, do you remember the first time someone handed you a coin? Maybe it was a shiny quarter or a crisp bill folded carefully into your palm. It felt powerful, didn't it? It felt like possibility. You could buy candy, maybe a toy, maybe even save it up for something bigger. But then something else happened. Somewhere along the way, that same little coin, once a symbol of joy, turned into a weight. The candy shop magic disappeared and suddenly money wasn't fun anymore. It became rent. It became bills. It became debt. It became the thing you never seemed to have enough of, no matter how hard you worked. And slowly, without realizing it, many of us handed money the crown. It became the master and we became the servant. Think about how we talk about money in everyday life. We say things like, I can't afford to do that. Or, money doesn't grow on trees. Or, I'm just trying to make ends meet. All of these phrases are subtle admissions of defeat, whispers of surrender to a master that dictates the boundaries of our lives. Instead of us commanding money, money commands us. Instead of us sending it out with purpose, we beg it to stay. Instead of money being the hammer in our toolbox, it becomes the architect, designing the structure of our lives without asking what we truly want. But what if I told you that money was never meant to hold that kind of power? What if I told you that money, at its core, is nothing more than a tool, a servant, a piece of energy designed to move in and out of your life at your command. Take the example of a farmer. A farmer owns tools, plows, shovels, tractors. Those tools are powerful, but they are powerless until the farmer picks them up. The plow cannot decide when to cut into the earth. The tractor cannot choose when to harvest. They sit, waiting, until a hand with vision and intention picks them up and directs them. Now imagine if the farmer woke up one morning and the tools told him what to do. Today you will not plant. Today you will dig a hole right here. Today you will exhaust yourself even though the season isn't ready. That sounds absurd, doesn't it? Tools cannot master their owner. Yet this is exactly how most of us live with money. We let it tell us when we can rest, when we can dream, when we can take risks, when we can't. We forget that we are the farmer and money is only the shovel in our hands. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "Man should not fear money but command it." She understood something that too many people overlook. Fear and reverence of money are what chain us to it. And fear, my friends, is the language of a servant bowing to a master. Think about the person who constantly checks their bank account, their heart racing before they click log in. That fear is a sign of enslavement. Think about the woman who stays in a toxic job because the paycheck is good, even though it eats away at her soul. That compromise is a sign of servitude. Money has climbed onto the throne and the human spirit, infinitely more valuable, kneels beneath it. But there are those who live differently. Imagine a man who wakes up with a dream, a vision to create something that matters. He looks at money not as a gatekeeper but as a workforce. He sends it out like employees on a mission. You go build that business. You invest in that opportunity. You feed that family. And the money obeys. It moves, it grows, it serves. Why? Because he refuses to let it be the master. He holds the vision and money simply follows. You see this mindset in great innovators and leaders. Steve Jobs didn't build Apple because he wanted more money. Money came, but it was never the master. His vision, to bring technology to the masses in beautiful human-centered design, was the master. Money served that vision. Oprah Winfrey didn't rise to success because she was chasing paychecks. She followed her calling and money became the tool that amplified her influence. The moment purpose sits on the throne, money bows down as a servant. But let's come back to you right here, right now. What does it mean for you in practical terms to treat money as your servant? It starts with a question: what do I want money to do for me? Not, how can I chase more of it? But, how can I direct it? A servant is given orders. A servant is told where to go, what to build, what to protect. So ask yourself, if money were your employee, what orders would you give? Would you tell it to provide your family with comfort and security? Would you tell it to fund your education, your growth, your passion? Would you tell it to create experiences, memories, impact? If you don't give it orders, money will find a way to enslave you instead. Look around at the people who struggle the most with money, and you will notice a common thread. They don't tell their money where to go. They earn it, they spend it, but they never command it. It slips through their fingers like sand because no vision, no intention, no order has been given. On the other hand, those who flourish financially, whether they are wealthy or modest, treat every dollar like an employee with a job. $1 is told to pay the bills. Another is told to grow in an investment. Another is told to serve the community. Another is told to rest in savings for a rainy day. Suddenly, money is not chaos. It is not master. It is a loyal workforce, building a life that reflects its owner's vision. And here's the most powerful part. When you begin to see money as your servant, fear starts to dissolve. The grip that anxiety has on your chest when the bills arrive begins to loosen. The shame of not having enough begins to fade. Why? Because you realize money cannot define your worth. A servant does not define the master. A servant amplifies the master's will. Whether you have $1 or 1,000,000, your value remains unchanged because your spirit, your mind, your purpose, those are the true masters. Money is energy. It is neutral. It is waiting to be told where to go. In your hands it can build dreams. In careless hands it can create destruction. But never forget, it does not have the power to rule unless you hand it the crown. So the real question is this: who wears the crown in your life? Is it money or is it you? And if it's money, are you ready, truly ready, to take it back, to stand tall, to tell money, you are my servant and from this day forward, you will obey my vision, not dictate it? Because the moment you decide that, you will begin to taste freedom. Not the kind of freedom measured in dollars, but the kind measured in peace, in joy, in the knowledge that you are finally the master and money is finally in its rightful place. Financial freedom begins with mindset, not just more income. That sentence alone can stir something deep because for most of our lives we've been taught the opposite. We've been conditioned to believe that if only we had more money, then we'd finally be free. More money would mean no stress, no late-night worries, no fear of tomorrow. But let's pause for a moment and ask, if more income was truly the answer, then why are so many people who earn high salaries still living paycheck to paycheck? Why do celebrities who make millions file for bankruptcy? Why do lottery winners often end up broke within years? The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Money doesn't create freedom. The mind does. Think about it like this. Imagine a man who has been given a bucket full of water. If his bucket is full of holes, it doesn't matter how much water is poured in. It will leak out drop by drop until there is nothing left. That's what happens when you try to solve financial struggles by only chasing more income without shifting your mindset. The bucket is your mentality. If it's full of fear, lack, and careless habits, no amount of money can fill it. But if the bucket is strong, whole, and directed by wisdom, even a little water can sustain life. I once knew a woman who worked 2 jobs, barely sleeping, always saying, "If I could just earn a little more, I'd be okay." She finally got a promotion, her paycheck doubled, and for a while she felt relief. But 6 months later she was right back where she started. Bills piled up, stress unchanged, her dream of freedom still out of reach. What happened? Her income had grown, but her mindset hadn't shifted. She still believed money was scarce. She still spent to fill emotional gaps. She still handed power to money instead of reclaiming it. The numbers in her bank account changed, but the story in her mind remained the same. Now picture another man. His salary was modest, nothing spectacular, but he lived with intention. He treated every dollar as an employee, gave it a purpose, and most importantly, he carried a mindset of abundance. He didn't say, "I can't afford this." Instead, he asked, "How can I make this possible?" That one mental shift opened doors. It led him to opportunities, investments, and creative solutions that multiplied his wealth over time. His freedom didn't start when he had more money. It started when he decided to think differently. There's a quote from Henry Ford that says, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." The same applies to money. If you think you're always broke, always behind, always trapped, your actions will reinforce that belief no matter how much income flows in. If you think you can direct money, use it wisely, and multiply it, your actions will align with that thought and freedom begins to take shape. Mindset shapes reality because money responds to the way you see it. Let's use a simple scenario. Imagine 2 friends both receive $10,000 unexpectedly. The first friend, operating from fear, says, "I'd better spend this quickly before it disappears." They buy new gadgets, go on a trip, upgrade their car. Within weeks, the money is gone and so is the sense of security. The second friend, operating from intention, says, "How can this money serve me long term?" They invest a portion, pay down debts, and keep some aside for opportunities. That same $10,000 becomes a seed, not just a fleeting moment. Same income, different outcomes, because of mindset. We live in a culture that glorifies more. More income, more possessions, more status. But more without wisdom is like pouring gasoline on an uncontrolled fire. It burns fast, it burns bright, but it destroys in the end. The true foundation of financial freedom is not the number on a paycheck, but the clarity of the person who receives it. It is not about how much you have, it's about how you think about what you have. Florence Scovel Shinn often spoke about aligning thought with abundance. She said, "Your word is your wand." The way you speak about money creates the reality you live in. If you constantly declare lack, lack is what you will notice and attract. If you speak of money as a loyal servant, ready to do your bidding, you begin to notice opportunities, ideas, and solutions that were invisible before. The shift happens not outside of you but inside of you first. Imagine standing at the edge of a river. Money is like the current, flowing endlessly, sometimes strong, sometimes weak, but always moving. Most people stand on the bank and complain, "There's not enough water for me." They dip in a bucket but it spills before they can carry it home. But a person with the right mindset builds a channel. They direct the water with purpose, guiding it to their crops, their village, their future. The river didn't change. The mindset did. There's a powerful story about John D. Rockefeller. As a young man, he wasn't yet the wealthiest person in the world. but he kept meticulous records of every cent he earned and spent. He lived with the mindset of stewardship long before the fortune came. His freedom wasn't born when he had millions. It was born in the way he thought about $1. This is why even today when people study financial habits of the wealthy, they discover the same truth. Financial freedom is a mental discipline first, a material abundance second. So if you want freedom, you must ask yourself not, how can I earn more? But, how can I think differently? Do you believe money controls you, or do you believe you command it? Do you believe opportunity is scarce, or do you believe abundance flows around you waiting to be tapped? Do you see yourself as a victim of circumstance or as a creator with the power to shape outcomes? The answers to these questions reveal the state of your financial mindset. The power of mindset shows up in the smallest choices. Think of the person who gets a raise and immediately inflates their lifestyle. New clothes, new car, new apartment. Their income grows, but so do their chains. Contrast that with someone who receives the same raise and instead of upgrading everything, they upgrade their vision. They set aside money for the future, they invest in growth, they build assets. Both had more income. Only one built freedom. Why? Because only one had the mindset of freedom before the money arrived. And here's the emotional core of it all. Freedom isn't something you wait for when the big break comes. Freedom is something you begin to practice now. It's waking up and saying, I am not my bank account. I'm not my paycheck. I am the thinker, the commander, the creator. From that place you may still have bills, you may still have struggles, but you are no longer enslaved. You are rehearsing freedom long before the financial abundance arrives. And that rehearsal, that mindset, is what attracts the opportunities that make freedom real. So, the chains you feel are not made of numbers or dollar signs. They are made of thoughts, beliefs, and fears. Break the thought and the chain falls away. Shift the mindset and freedom begins, whether you have a little or a lot. And when the mindset of freedom takes root, more income becomes a servant to that freedom instead of a master over your life. Purpose should lead your life. Money should follow. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest truths for people to accept because for so many of us, money has become the compass. We make decisions not based on what lights us up inside, but on what pays the bills, what keeps us safe, what looks practical. And while there is wisdom in responsibility, there is danger in allowing money to be the only voice in the room. Without purpose, money is a restless wanderer. Comes, it goes, it slips through our fingers. With purpose, money finds direction, it finds meaning, it becomes a loyal soldier marching behind a vision greater than itself. Think about history for a moment. The men and women who changed the world, did they wake up in the morning and say, how can I make the most money today? No. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't march on Washington for a paycheck. Gandhi didn't endure prison for profit. Mother Teresa didn't serve the poor because she calculated financial return. They lived and breathed purpose, and because they lived for something bigger than themselves, resources, money, influence, support, followed them. Purpose was the fire. Money was the fuel that gathered to keep the fire alive. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who dreamed of opening a community center for children in his neighborhood. He didn't have the money. He barely had the resources. But his vision was clear. He wanted a safe place where children could learn, play, and stay off the streets. Instead of saying, I can't afford this, he said, this must exist. And because his purpose was so strong, people rallied behind him. Volunteers showed up. Donations came in. Local businesses partnered with him. Eventually, the center opened and hundreds of children's lives were changed. Did the money come first? No. The purpose came first and money followed like a servant answering a call. Now contrast that with someone who chases money without purpose. They switch careers every few years not because they love the work but because the paycheck is bigger. They climb higher, they earn more, they buy more. But inside they are empty. Their life is full of things but lacking in meaning. That emptiness gnaws at them in quiet moments, when the noise of achievement dies down and the question rises, what is this all for? Without purpose, even wealth feels like poverty. Steve Jobs once said, people with passion can change the world. Notice he didn't say, people with money can change the world. Money doesn't inspire. Money doesn't heal. Money doesn't lift the soul. Purpose does. Purpose moves people. Purpose creates vision. And once vision is alive, money begins to orbit it naturally like a planet drawn into gravity. But here's the struggle. We've been taught to invert this truth. From a young age, children are asked, What do you want to be when you grow up? But the hidden question is often, what job will make you money? A child says, I want to be an artist, and the adult replies, that's nice, but how will you make a living? A teenager says, I want to start a nonprofit, and someone warns, there's no money in that. Slowly, purpose is buried under practicality, and money takes the driver's seat. Decades later, those same children, now adults, wake up one morning in careers they never loved, wondering why life feels so heavy. They traded purpose for money, and the bargain left them empty-handed. But when you flip it, when you let purpose lead, everything changes. Purpose makes the long nights worth it. Purpose makes the failures survivable. Purpose makes money meaningful because now money isn't just a number. It's a servant with a job to do. Imagine the musician who pours their heart into songs, not for fame, not for riches, but to heal, to inspire, to move souls. Money follows their purpose in the form of ticket sales, albums, opportunities. Imagine the teacher who teaches not for the paycheck, but because they believe every child carries greatness inside. Money shows up as salary, but also as the deeper wealth of changed lives. There's a story about Howard Schultz, the man who built Starbucks. When he was asked why he pushed so hard to expand the company, he didn't say, because I wanted to be rich. He said it was about community, about creating a third place between work and home where people could connect. Purpose led. Money followed. That's why the brand grew, because the vision was never just about coffee, it was about belonging. And yet people resist this truth. They say, but I need money to survive. And yes, that's true. But survival is not the same as living. Survival is the floor, not the ceiling. If you make survival your master, you'll never rise higher than scraping by. But if you let purpose take the throne, survival is handled on the way to something greater. Money bends toward purpose like metal to a magnet. It may not come overnight. It may not come easily. But it comes with persistence because the universe itself has a way of supporting what is rooted in truth. Think of it this way. Money without purpose is like a sailboat without a destination. It floats, it drifts, it may even move quickly if the winds are strong. But where does it end up? Lost at sea. But money with purpose is a sailboat with a captain, a compass, a charted course. Every gust of wind becomes fuel, every wave becomes a test, but the ship is moving toward something real. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. If you see money as your ultimate goal, you will receive money, but you may lose yourself in the process. If you see purpose as your North Star, you will receive money as a servant to that vision, and in the process, you will gain not just wealth but meaning. So the real question to ask yourself is not, how can I make more money? But what do I want my life to mean? What dream, what vision burns in your heart so deeply that you would pursue it even if no one was watching? That is your purpose. And once you name it, once you commit to it, money will begin to find its place. Not as the master pulling your strings, but as the servant carrying your tools, building your vision, funding your mission. When you live this way, something powerful happens. The fear of not having enough begins to fade because you know you are moving toward something bigger than numbers. The stress of comparing your income to others diminishes, because you measure your life by meaning, not money. And slowly, step by step, freedom begins, not because you are rich but because you are aligned. And in that alignment, money, faithful servant that it is, cannot help but follow. If you can't master $1, you'll never master $1 million. That truth may sound harsh, almost discouraging, but it is one of the most liberating lessons you can ever learn. Because the path to freedom is not paved with giant leaps of fortune. It is carved by the small, steady steps of discipline. People imagine that their lives would change instantly if they suddenly had more money. They picture the debts disappearing, the worries evaporating, the lifestyle expanding. But if you watch closely, history and real life reveal a different pattern. The person who struggles to manage a little will struggle even more when they receive a lot. The weight of money doesn't make life easier if you haven't built the strength to carry it. There are countless stories of lottery winners who went from rags to riches and then back to rags again. They received millions overnight, but within years, sometimes months, they were bankrupt, broken, and even worse off than before. Why? Because they never learned how to master $1. They never learned how to tell money what to do, how to make it serve a vision. Instead, they treated it like an endless river with no boundaries. They bought homes they couldn't maintain, cars they didn't need, businesses they weren't prepared to run. Their mindset didn't shift, their habits didn't shift, their relationship with money didn't shift. And so the millions slipped away as easily as the few dollars had before. On the other hand, think about the stories of those who started with almost nothing and built empires. Many entrepreneurs began in garages, working with scraps, saving pennies, reinvesting every small gain. They didn't despise the small dollar, they mastered it. They treated every cent like a seed that could be planted. And because they honored the little, they grew into the much. The discipline of managing $1 created the foundation for handling 1,000, 1 million, and beyond. It's like a musician. If you can't play a simple melody with one instrument, how will you handle an orchestra? If you can't take care of a single plant, how will you manage a forest? Mastery at the small level creates capacity for the large. The universe will not entrust you with abundance if you are careless with what you already have. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "Infinite spirit opens the way for my immediate supply." That supply may begin small like a seed because life is testing whether you can nurture it before it grows into something larger. I knew a man once who always said, "When I make more money, then I'll start saving. Then I'll start giving. Then I'll start investing." But he never did. Every time his paycheck grew, so did his expenses. Every time a raise came, so did the lifestyle upgrades. Years went by, and he was still waiting for the right moment to begin. The truth is, he never had a money problem, he had a mastery problem. He never learned to control $1, so no amount of dollars could ever set him free. Now contrast that with another woman I knew. Her income was modest, but she practiced control. Every dollar had an assignment. She budgeted carefully, saved consistently, gave generously, and invested wisely, even when it was just small amounts. To others, it looked like she wasn't moving fast. But over time, her small discipline compounded. 10 years later, she had built wealth, not just financial but emotional. A sense of peace, of control, of freedom. She didn't wait for a million to arrive to practice mastery. She began with one. And that made all the difference. It's not about the number. It's about the pattern. If your pattern is chaos with a little, it will be chaos with a lot. If your pattern is clarity with a little, it will be clarity with a lot. Money only amplifies what you already are. It magnifies your habits, your mindset, your character. If you are generous with $10, you will be generous with 10,000. If you are careless with $10, you will be careless with 10,000. That is why mastering $1 matters more than dreaming of millions. Think about children who are given allowances. Some spend it the moment they receive it, others save, others buy something thoughtful. The allowance isn't about the amount. It's about training. It's about shaping a relationship with money. Adults are no different. The $1 lessons are the foundation for the $1 million responsibilities. And the sooner you embrace that, the sooner you step into true freedom. There is an old saying, "He who is faithful with little will be faithful with much." This applies not just to money but to life. If you are careless with the small blessings, why should greater ones be placed in your hands? But when you treat the small with reverence, with respect, you prove to yourself and to the world that you are ready for more. Imagine your financial life like a garden. If you cannot care for a single flower, watering it daily, protecting it from weeds, how could you possibly handle acres of farmland? People think they want the farmland, but they ignore the flower in front of them. They neglect it, they let it wither, and yet they cry out for more. But the wise know better. They bend down, tend to the flower, honor it. And in time the garden expands. The mastery of $1 also changes how you see money. Instead of chasing it with desperation, you begin to handle it with dignity. You don't despise it, you don't fear it, you don't worship it, you guide it. That guidance is what builds the bridge from lack to abundance. So many people say, "If only I had more, I'd be generous." But generosity doesn't start with millions. It starts with one act of kindness, one gift, one sacrifice. Money only multiplies the heart that holds it. If your heart clings to fear and scarcity with $1, it will cling even harder with 1 million. But if your heart can release, can give, can trust with $1, then abundance has room to flow in and out of your life without chaining you down. Think of Warren Buffett. Despite being one of the richest men in the world, he is known for his frugality, his discipline, his respect for money's role. Long before billions entered his life, he mastered the principle of careful stewardship. That mastery allowed him to hold wealth without being consumed by it. It's not the billions that define him, it's the habits he built with the small. Mastery begins in the small, invisible places. How you handle spare change, how you react to a sudden bill, how you treat the first fruits of your labor. Every small decision shapes your capacity for greater responsibility. And when greater comes, it does not crush you, it magnifies you. So when you hold $1 in your hand, don't dismiss it as insignificant. See it as a test, a teacher, a servant waiting for your command. If you can master the servant in small form, you will one day master it in abundance. But if you cannot guide it when it whispers, you will never control it when it roars. Because the truth is timeless. If you can't master $1, you will never master $1 million. And freedom, true freedom, belongs to the one who starts with one. Every dollar should have a job. That's the heart of intention with money, and yet it's something most people never truly practice. Think about it, when you wake up in the morning you probably know your own role. Whether you're a parent, a worker, a student, a dreamer. You know where you're going at least for that day. But what about your money? Does it wake up with a job or does it drift through your hands without direction? A dollar without a purpose is like a worker without a task. It becomes lazy, distracted, even destructive. But when you give every dollar a clear mission, something powerful happens. You take control. You become the employer and your money becomes the employee. And loyal employees, when managed well, build empires. I once heard a story about a man who said, "I don't know where my money goes." And the wise person he was speaking to replied, "Then it goes where someone else tells it to." That's the truth most of us ignore. If you don't give your money orders, the world will. Advertisers will. Temptations will. Impulse will. You'll find yourself looking back at the end of the month asking, "Where did it all go?" As though money had sprouted wings and flown away. But money doesn't fly on its own. It walks where you tell it. And if you don't tell it where to go, it wanders into places that leave you empty. Imagine for a moment you're running a company and you have 10 employees. If you don't give them tasks, if you simply say, "Do whatever you want," what will happen? Some will waste time, some will argue, some may even walk out the door. Chaos will rule. But if you assign each one a job, clear, defined, meaningful, they will build something greater together. That is exactly how money works. Every dollar is an employee. If $1 is told to feed your family, another to save for the future, another to grow in an investment, and another to create joy through generosity, suddenly your money is not scattered. It's organized, it's efficient, it's powerful. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "Order is heaven's first law." And it applies to money as much as anything else. Order turns chaos into peace. Order turns fear into confidence. And when your dollars are ordered, your life begins to reflect stability. Even when the numbers aren't enormous. The peace you feel doesn't come from having more, but from knowing your money is serving you with purpose. There's a story about John Wesley, the great preacher. He once said, "Make all you can, save all you can, give all you can." Notice the balance. He didn't say make endlessly and spend mindlessly. He gave money direction, jobs that aligned with his values. That's why his legacy wasn't just spiritual but also financial. He commanded money, he didn't let money command him. Now let me paint you a real-life scenario. Two people earn the exact same salary. The first person spends without intention. They buy what they feel in the moment, pay bills as they come, and hope something is left at the end of the month. Usually nothing is. The second person takes that same salary but gives every dollar a job before the month even begins. This dollar pays the bills. This dollar goes into savings. This one invests in growth. This one is set aside for giving. And yes, this one is for enjoyment, for celebrating life. At the end of the month, the second person has progress, peace, and purpose, while the first person has stress, regret, and confusion. Same income, two outcomes. The difference isn't money, it's intention. Think of your money as soldiers in an army. Each one carries power, but if you send them running in all directions, they will be defeated. If you unite them under a clear mission, they conquer. One soldier may not change the outcome of a battle, but an army of disciplined soldiers with a single purpose is unstoppable. Every dollar is a soldier. Your vision is the general. And when you take command, victory follows. Some people resist this idea. They say, "It's exhausting to track money like that." But the truth is, it's exhausting not to. It's exhausting to wonder if you'll have enough for the bills. It's exhausting to live in constant scarcity. It's exhausting to let money wander and then scramble to fix the damage. Giving every dollar a job doesn't create stress. It creates relief. It's the same kind of relief you feel when your house is clean, when your schedule is planned, when your path is clear. Order brings peace. Let me share a simple but powerful example. A young couple I once knew was drowning in debt. They worked hard, but it always seemed like the money wasn't enough. They decided one day to start giving every dollar a job. They wrote down their income, listed their expenses, and told each dollar where to go before they spent it. At first, it felt restrictive, almost suffocating. But slowly something amazing happened. They paid off their debt piece by piece. They began saving for emergencies. They even set aside money to give away, something they never thought they could do before. Years later, they weren't rich in the traditional sense, but they were free. Why? Because their money no longer ruled them. They ruled their money, and every dollar knew its role. We often think freedom comes from more, but real freedom comes from control. Picture a horse. A wild, untamed horse has incredible power, but it's dangerous. It runs wherever it wants, often into destruction. But a trained horse, guided with skill, becomes a powerful ally. It can carry you across great distances, it can work the land, it can even save your life. Money is like that horse. Untamed, it destroys. Trained, it serves. The reins are in your hands, and those reins are called intention. Even the smallest acts of intention matter. Putting aside a few dollars consistently for emergencies, even when it feels insignificant, builds a safety net that one day may save you from despair. Choosing to invest a small portion today plants a tree that may provide shade for your future family. Assigning money to generosity, even if it's just a few coins, builds a heart of abundance that attracts more. Every small act of direction compounds, until one day you look back and realize your small intentional steps built a foundation of freedom. The truth is, money is never idle. If you don't give it a job, it will find one on its own, and it usually won't be in your favor. It will serve impulse, temptation, waste, and regret. But when you sit down, breathe, and assign it purpose, you create a partnership. You and your money begin working together instead of against each other. And that shift can change your entire life. So imagine holding a single dollar in your hand. Don't dismiss it as small or meaningless. Look at it and ask, what is your job? Maybe its job is to feed your family. Maybe it's to grow into $10 through investment. Maybe it's to bless a stranger. Whatever it is, choose it. Speak it. Command it. Because when every dollar has a job, money no longer controls you. You control it. And that, more than abundance itself, is the beginning of freedom. There comes a point in life when you realize that money, as important as it is, was never meant to be the final destination. It is simply a vehicle, a tool, a servant on the path to something far greater. If you make money your master, you will spend your days chained to it, chasing it, fearing its absence, and bowing to its presence. But if you make it your servant, you begin to see it for what it truly is. A means to amplify your values, a way to express your soul in the world, a bridge to freedom rather than a cage. The tragedy is that so many people spend their entire lives building prisons with their own gold, never realizing they could have built wings instead. Imagine a man who works endless hours, sacrifices time with his family, and sacrifices his health, all in the name of making more. He tells himself it's temporary, that one day he'll enjoy the fruits of his labor. But years pass, his children grow up without him, his health declines, and though his bank account is full, his heart is empty. What good is it if your servant becomes your master? What good is it to gain the world but lose your soul? True freedom comes when money is placed in its rightful position, behind your vision, not ahead of it. Florence Scovel Shinn reminded us that life responds to the images we hold in our minds. If your vision is always centered on lack, you attract more lack. If your vision is only centered on accumulation, you may build wealth but feel hollow inside. But if your vision is centered on purpose, on love, on contribution, on freedom, then money becomes a faithful servant that helps you manifest that vision. It stops being the goal and becomes the channel. Think of history's great builders, the people we remember centuries later. Were they remembered because they had money? No, they are remembered because of what they did with it, because of the vision they used it to fuel. Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men of his time, spent the latter part of his life giving away most of his fortune to libraries, schools, and institutions of learning. Why? Because he realized that money locked away was meaningless, but money set free with purpose could educate generations. His legacy wasn't his wealth. It was the thousands of libraries that still carry his name. The money served the vision, not the other way around. On a smaller scale, think of a mother who works tirelessly not to hoard riches, but to create stability for her children. Each dollar she earns has a face attached to it. The smile of her child, the safety of her home, the hope of a better future. She doesn't worship money, but she commands it to serve her highest calling. That is why even with modest income she can live richly, because her wealth is not measured only in dollars, but in purpose, in impact, in the love she nurtures through her choices. Money as a servant is like fire in a fireplace. Contained, it warms, it protects, it sustains life. Uncontrolled, it burns the house down. When you put money in the right place, when you give it boundaries, direction, and purpose, it illuminates your life without consuming it. But when it sits at the center of your life, uncontrolled, it scorches everything in its path. The question is, who holds the match, you or the fire? There's a story about a wealthy businessman who was once asked how much money was enough. He replied, "Just a little more." That is the mindset of someone enslaved by wealth. Enough never arrives. Satisfaction never knocks. Peace never comes. But contrast that with someone who says, "I have enough, and with what I have I will build something meaningful." That person may not have the world's riches, but they have the world's freedom. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. On one path is the endless chase, where money sits on the throne and you run behind it, panting, desperate, never catching up. On the other path, you walk ahead with clarity, carrying your vision in your heart. Behind you, money follows like a loyal servant, carrying the bags, opening the doors, making the journey easier but never deciding the destination. Which path do you want to walk? Even in spiritual texts, money is often described as a test. Not because money is evil, but because it reveals where your loyalty lies. Will you use it as a tool to serve others, or will you let it dominate your decisions? The love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself but the worship of it. When money dictates your choices, you compromise your integrity, you sell pieces of yourself you can never buy back. But when money obeys your choices, you become unshakable. Let me tell you about a young man who dreamed of being an artist. Everyone around him discouraged him, saying art would never pay the bills. So he chose a career he hated but that promised financial security. 4 years he worked, collected paychecks, and filled his life with things he didn't need. But the fire of art still burned within him. One day, exhausted and unfulfilled, he realized that money had become his master. It had silenced his passion, dictated his days, and stolen his joy. So he made a choice. He began painting again, not abandoning his responsibilities, but redirecting his money to support his art instead of suffocating it. Over time he built a business around his gift, and his money finally began serving him instead of chaining him. His joy returned not because he had more, but because he had aligned his money with his vision. This is the essence of making money your servant. It is aligning your financial power with your deepest values, your true calling. When money is a servant, it works for your dreams, not against them. It gives you time with your family. It fuels your generosity. It opens doors for growth. It protects you in times of hardship. It supports the legacy you want to leave behind. Ask yourself, if money were no longer a concern, what would you do differently with your life? Would you spend more time with loved ones? Would you travel, create, give, or rest? The answer to that question reveals your true vision, the one money should serve. Don't wait for the day when you have enough. Start today by redirecting the money you already have toward the life you actually desire. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. When money becomes your servant, you use it to plant seeds of good, seeds that inevitably return to you multiplied. You give and generosity circles back. You invest in growth and opportunities expand. You save with wisdom and peace of mind returns. You align with vision and life aligns with you. In the end, the choice is always yours. Money is neutral. It doesn't care whether it enslaves you or empowers you. It simply follows orders. If you place it on the throne, it will rule you without mercy. But if you put it in its proper place, it will carry your vision forward faithfully, like a trusted companion. The question you must answer every day is this: will money be your master or will it be your servant? Every moment of this journey has been about shifting your mindset, breaking limitations, and stepping boldly into the life you deserve. If this message sparked something in you, don't just let it fade, fuel it. Tap the like button to let us know you're ready for more, and hit subscribe if you want to keep growing stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. Not because I asked, but because your future demands it. Now tell me in the comments, what's the one belief about money or success you're ready to release today? Your answer might just inspire someone else's breakthrough. Let me begin with a question. Have you ever noticed that money seems to run away from some people, while it flows almost magically to others? We often say things like, "I can't afford that," or "money doesn't grow on trees." But Florence Scovel Shinn, a woman ahead of her time in the 1920s, revealed a rare prosperity secret. Backhand index pointing right: money responds when you call it by name. Now this sounds unusual, doesn't it? Almost mystical. But think about it. When you call a friend's name across a crowded room, they turn. They respond. Why? Because they were acknowledged. Money works in the same way. Florence Shinn taught that money is not just paper. It's energy. And energy responds to attention. Imagine this. You walk into your home. You see your dog sitting in the corner. You never call it, never look at it, never pet it. Do you expect loyalty? Do you expect joy? Of course not. But if every day you say, "Come here, buddy. You belong here," that dog comes running with excitement. Money is like that. It doesn't run to people who ignore it. It runs to those who acknowledge it. Most people unknowingly push money away. They call it by name, yes, but in the wrong way. Money is evil. Money ruins people. Money slips through my fingers. Tell me, would you want to spend time with someone who constantly insults you? Neither would money. So how do we summon money the right way? It starts with words. Florence Shinn would literally speak to money. Money, come to me. You're my servant. You circulate through my life freely and joyfully. Sounds strange? Let me give you a real-life example. I once knew a man who was drowning in debt. Instead of repeating, I'm broke, he changed his script. Every morning he said, "Money, you are welcome in my life. You belong with me. You flow to me from unexpected places." Within months, opportunities showed up. A side business. A friend offering a partnership. Suddenly, money wasn't hiding anymore. Coincidence? Or was he finally calling money by name? Let's step back in history. The Bible says, "Ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find." Notice, it doesn't say, "Complain and it shall be given." This is ask. Direct. Clear. By name. Think of ancient kings. When they summoned wealth, they didn't whisper. They declared it. They called it with authority. Florence Shinn believed the same. Money obeys the voice of faith. Picture this. You're at a crowded train station. You want your child's attention. Do you yell, "Hey kid"? Or do you use their name? The name cuts through the noise. The name pulls them instantly. Money is lost in the noise of your doubts, fears, and negativity. If you want it to recognize you, use its name. Speak directly. Invite it home. So today I challenge you. Stop speaking against money. Stop treating it like an enemy. Tonight when you're alone, say these words aloud. Money, you're welcome here. You belong with me. You circulate through my hands for good, for growth, and for joy. Say it with conviction. Say it daily. Watch how your relationship with money shifts. Because when you summon money by name, you awaken an ancient secret. A secret Florence Scovel Shinn revealed. A secret waiting for you to use. So let me ask you one last question. Will you keep ignoring money? Or will you start calling it home by name? Key takeaways. Money is not just paper. It's energy that responds to attention. We often repel money with negative phrases and beliefs. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that speaking directly to money attracts it. Words of authority and welcome create a magnetic pull for prosperity. Calling money by name shifts the subconscious and opens doors of opportunity. Treat money like a loyal friend. Acknowledge it, respect it, and invite it. You've probably noticed how powerful a name is. Think about it for a moment. You're walking through a busy street, people rushing by, horns blaring, music coming from shops, conversations floating through the air. Suddenly, someone calls your name. Not "Hey you," not a random shout, your name. Instantly your head turns. Your heart recognizes it even before your brain does. Your name is like a secret key that cuts through noise, chaos, and distraction. It has weight. It carries authority. Makes you feel seen. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that money is no different. What if money, too, responds when called by name? What if the reason some people seem to attract it effortlessly is not because they're luckier or smarter, but simply because they've learned to acknowledge it, to call it directly instead of ignoring it? Florence Scovel Shinn believed exactly this. She taught that money is more than paper bills and coins. It is energy, alive in its own way, and like every living thing, it responds to recognition. The way you call it, the way you speak about it, the way you invite it matters far more than you've ever been told. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a loyal dog. Every evening it sits by the door waiting for its owner to come home. If the owner walks in and never calls its name, never pets it, never shows affection, what happens? The dog doesn't feel wanted. Over time it retreats, grows distant, perhaps even hides. But if the owner walks in each day, kneels down, calls out, "Max, my good boy, come here," that dog runs forward with joy. Its tail wags. Its energy surges. Why? Because it has been acknowledged. Because it feels it belongs. Money is like that. If every time you think of money you sigh, complain, or ignore it, why would it want to linger around you? But when you call it, when you acknowledge it, when you give it a place of belonging, it doesn't resist you. It responds. Now, I know this sounds odd to our logical minds. After all, money doesn't have ears, it doesn't breathe, it doesn't have a pulse like a human or a dog. But ask yourself this. Doesn't energy respond to attention? When you place your attention on something, when you focus your mind and words toward it, doesn't it grow? Haven't you noticed that the people who constantly complain about how little they have always seem to attract even less? And the ones who, even in their struggles, speak positively about money, welcoming it, respecting it, somehow find opportunities opening for them? Let me share a story. A young woman once told me how she grew up in a household where the only time money was mentioned was during arguments. She remembered her father coming home, slamming his hands on the table, saying, "Money never stays. Money runs from us." She remembered her mother sighing every time a bill arrived, muttering, "Money is the root of our problems." For years this woman carried those same beliefs. She worked 2 jobs, barely scraping by, and every month ended the same, with bills piling higher than her paycheck. One day, while reading Florence Scovel Shinn, she stumbled on this line: "Money is God in action. It responds to faith and recognition." Something shifted. She decided, just as an experiment, to start calling money by name. She stopped saying, "I'm broke." Instead she would say, "Money, you are welcome here. You belong with me." She taped notes on her mirror. "Money comes when I call." Every night before sleeping she would whisper, "Money, you are my friend. Thank you for showing up tomorrow." At first nothing changed. But within weeks little things started to happen. She got unexpected refunds in the mail. A friend repaid a loan she had long forgotten about. She found opportunities at work for overtime and eventually was offered a better position. Did she suddenly become a financial genius? No. She simply shifted the way she spoke to money, and in doing so she shifted her energy. She stopped ignoring money and money stopped ignoring her. Think of it like being at a crowded train station. Children are running, whistles are blowing, announcements are echoing. You want your child's attention. If you shout, "Hey kid," in the middle of that chaos, 10 heads turn, but not the one you want. But the moment you use their name, clear, direct, powerful, the noise fades and your child hears you. Names have that effect. They cut through noise. They command recognition. And money, believe it or not, responds in exactly the same way. There's a reason ancient cultures treated money with reverence. In some traditions, people literally spoke blessings over their coins before spending them. They called wealth by name, thanking it for arriving, blessing it as it departed so it would return multiplied. They didn't see money as cold paper. They saw it as living energy, a current to be directed, respected, and summoned. And isn't it interesting that in English we call it currency? A current. Flowing. Moving. Alive. Now let's pause for a second. If money is a current, if it's flowing like water, where does it flow? Toward places where it is welcomed or away from places where it is resisted? The answer is obvious. Water doesn't flow uphill to resistance. It flows downhill to open channels. If you are open to money, if you call it, if you make space for it, it comes. If you block it with fear, doubt, or insults, it flows elsewhere. And here's the truth many people don't want to admit. We've been calling money all along, but often in the wrong way. When you say, "Money never stays with me," you are calling it, but you are also commanding it to leave. When you say, "I'll never have enough," you are calling money by name and telling it to avoid you. You are sending instructions into the universe, and money, like a loyal servant, obeys. That's the painful part. But here's the liberating part. You can change the call at any moment. You can decide today, this very hour, to summon money differently. To speak differently. To treat it not as a runaway thief but as a faithful friend. Imagine walking into your home tonight. Picture money as if it were sitting silently in the corner, waiting to see how you treat it. Do you glare at it and say, "You're never enough, you're the problem, you're the reason for my stress"? Or do you smile and say, "Money, I'm glad you're here. I welcome you. Honor you. You circulate through my life with ease"? Which response do you think will make money eager to stay? Florence Scovel Shinn used to say, "Whatever man voices, he begins to attract." Your words are like magnets. The name you use for money, the way you call it, determines whether it hides or whether it runs to you. And isn't it time you stopped chasing money and instead learned how to summon it, clearly, directly, powerfully, by name? Most people don't realize it, but they are casting spells on their money every single day. Not with wands, not with candles, not with ancient rituals, but with their words. Words are not light, casual things. Words have weight. Words are containers of belief. And when it comes to money, the way you speak about it shapes the way it behaves around you. Think back to your childhood. How many times did you hear phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "We can't afford that," or "Rich people are greedy"? Those weren't harmless sayings. They were seeds planted deep in the subconscious, seeds that grew into beliefs. And those beliefs became the silent script that runs in the background of your financial life. You may not even notice it, but it's there playing over and over. Florence Scovel Shinn believed that most people repel money without even realizing it, and the tragedy is they think they are simply telling the truth. But words don't just describe reality. They create it. Let me give you a picture. Imagine standing at the doorway of your home with a friend. This friend knocks on your door every day, and every day you open it only to frown, sigh, and say, "Oh, it's you again." You never stay long. You always cause problems. How long do you think that friend will keep showing up? Not very long. At some point they'll stop knocking. Now replace that friend with money. If every time you see it you say, "You're never enough. You slip through my fingers. You're the cause of all my stress," why would it want to stay? Would you? I once spoke to a man who had struggled financially his whole life. He told me he could never hold on to money, that it disappeared as quickly as it came. I asked him, "When money enters your life, what do you usually say?" He laughed, a bit embarrassed, and admitted, "Honestly, I usually say something like, 'Well, it's gone before it even arrives.'" And sure enough, it always was. But here's the thing, he was not describing reality. He was creating it. By declaring money's departure before it even settled in, he was commanding it to obey his words. And it did. Florence once wrote, "Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving." That means if you see yourself as a person money avoids, then money must follow that script. Your words are like stage directions in a play, and money is simply following your lead. When you mutter under your breath, "Money is hard to get," you have just written the scene where you struggle endlessly for it. When you tell your children, "We can't afford that," you've passed the script on to the next generation, teaching them to push money away before it even has a chance to arrive. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this. A woman I knew grew up in poverty, and for decades she reinforced that identity by repeating, "I'm poor. That's just who I am." Even when she got a decent paying job, she still lived paycheck to paycheck because her words made her blind to opportunity. If a raise was offered, she told herself she didn't deserve it. If an investment possibility came, she said, "That's for rich people, not me." Every time she spoke, she slammed the door in money's face. But one day she overheard her little daughter playing with dolls. The girl was pretending one doll was the mother and another the child. And the child doll asked for something, to which the mother doll replied, "We can't afford that. We never have enough money." The woman froze. Her daughter was imitating her words. She realized she had been casting a spell, not just on her own life but on her child's future. That was the moment she decided to change the script. Think about that for a moment. How many of us are unintentionally teaching the next generation to fear or resent money? How many times do we sigh over bills, groan at prices, or mutter curses under our breath as if money itself were the enemy? And if money hears that, if energy responds to attention, then what message are we sending? We are saying, "Stay away. You're not wanted here." There's a strange irony at play. We claim we want money, yet we insult it more than we welcome it. Imagine saying you want love, but every time love shows up you sneer, "You'll just hurt me. You'll never stay. You'll betray me." Would love stay? Or would it retreat? The answer is obvious. Money responds the same way. Even our culture feeds us this spell of negativity. Movies often portray wealthy people as corrupt, greedy, or selfish. Common sayings like, "Easy come, easy go," or "The love of money is the root of all evil," are repeated without thought. And yet, when Florence Shinn studied the scriptures, she noticed something remarkable. Nowhere does it say that money itself is evil. What it warns against is the love of money above all else. That's a very different message. It means money is neutral. Can serve good or harm depending on how we use it. But when we paint it as a villain, we drive it out of our lives. I once asked a group of people to close their eyes and say out loud the first word that came to their mind when I said the word money. The responses were telling. Stress. Debt. Problem. Never enough. Only a few said things like freedom or opportunity. That exercise revealed the invisible spells most of us live under. We are literally commanding money to act like stress, debt, and lack. And like a loyal servant, it obeys. Florence suggested a powerful reversal. Instead of cursing money, bless it. Instead of saying, I never have enough, say, money flows to me freely and abundantly. Instead of groaning when you spend, say, I am grateful for the money that allowed this, and grateful for the money returning to me multiplied. She called it speaking the word. And though it sounds simple, it is transformative. I remember another story of a man who changed his relationship with money using this exact principle. He had always joked, I'm terrible with money. Money hates me. And of course his bank account reflected it. After learning about Florence's teachings, he decided to experiment. Every time he caught himself saying something negative, he replaced it with a blessing. Instead of, I can't afford this, he said, money is on its way. I welcome it. Instead of, money hates me, he said, money loves to be with me. Money enjoys staying in my company. Within 6 months, his financial situation shifted dramatically. He was offered a better paying job, his debts decreased, and he even started saving for the first time in his life. He told me it felt like money had been standing just outside his door all along, waiting for an invitation to come in. What if it's the same for you? What if money has been hovering near your life, but your words have been telling it to keep its distance? What if you've been unknowingly casting a negative spell with every sigh, every complaint, every phrase of lack? And what if starting today you could break that spell simply by changing the way you speak? Florence Scovel believed you could. And the more I've seen, the more I believe it too. There comes a moment in life when a person realizes that the way they have been speaking about money has not been serving them, and that realization opens the door to something extraordinary. Most of us have been trained to chase money, to run after it like a desperate pursuer in a game we can never quite win. But Florence Scovel Shinn offered a rare, almost shocking suggestion. Stop chasing. Instead, summon money. Speak to it. Call it as if it were already yours. At first glance, this might sound strange, maybe even foolish. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, haven't you seen how words have the power to shape reality? Haven't you noticed how the way someone talks about their health, their relationships, their future, often ends up becoming their truth? Why should money be any different? I knew a man who was drowning in debt. He carried the weight of it like a boulder strapped to his back. Every time we spoke, his words were the same. I'm broke. I never have enough. The more I work, the less I see. He believed he was just describing his situation, but what he didn't realize was that he was reinforcing it. He was giving his subconscious clear instructions. Stay broke, stay limited, stay burdened. One day, out of sheer exhaustion, he decided to try something new. He read Florence's teaching and laughed at the idea of speaking directly to money, but he figured, what do I have to lose? So he started. Each morning he would say, money, you are welcome in my life. You belong with me. You flow to me in expected and unexpected ways. At first it felt mechanical, even silly, but he kept at it. Weeks passed and slowly cracks began to appear in the walls that held him back. He received an unexpected tax refund. A friend he hadn't spoken to in years repaid a long-forgotten loan. His boss offered him the chance to take on extra hours, which later led to a full promotion. It was as though doors that had always been closed were now swinging open. He told me, I didn't suddenly get smarter or more talented. I just stopped telling money to run from me. I started inviting it. His life began to change the moment he stopped cursing money and began summoning it as though it were a trusted ally. Think of it this way. A farmer doesn't curse the soil and expect crops to grow. He plants seeds, waters them, and calls them forth with faith that they will sprout. The soil responds not to doubt but to care, attention, and expectation. Money operates on the same principle. If you scatter seeds of fear with phrases like, there's never enough, or, I'll always struggle, the harvest will reflect exactly that. But if you plant seeds of expectation by summoning money, calling it by name, blessing its arrival, giving thanks for it even before it shows up. You are aligning yourself with abundance. This principle might sound mystical, but it's deeply practical. Consider athletes who visualize their victories before they happen. They see themselves winning, they speak words of victory, and the body follows the mind. Or think of someone preparing for a difficult exam. If they spend weeks repeating, "I'm going to fail," they've already set the outcome. But if they declare, "I am ready, I am capable, I will succeed," they summon the energy and focus needed to make it true. Why should money, which is simply energy in another form, respond any differently? I remember speaking with a woman who worked as a freelance artist. She loved her craft but constantly struggled financially. She often said, "Artists are always broke. That's just the way it is." When she encountered Florence Shinn's work, something inside her shifted. She began treating money not as a cruel master but as a partner. She would say aloud, "Money, you are welcome in my art. You flow to me when I create. You support me so I can share beauty with the world." Soon her art began attracting buyers in ways she hadn't imagined. An online gallery featured her work. Commissions began to pour in. She told me with tears in her eyes, "For the first time I feel like money wants to be with me." All because she summoned it instead of rejecting it. The practice of summoning money isn't about greed. It's about alignment. Florence reminded her readers that money is a servant, not a master. You call it not so it can control you but so you can direct it toward good, toward building, creating, helping, growing. She often used the affirmation, "Money is my servant. I use it for good and I am divinely supplied." Notice the tone. Not desperation, not begging, but authority. Summoning is not asking timidly, it is declaring boldly. It is speaking as if the unseen has already heard you and is rushing to obey. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine you are standing in a vast hall filled with echoes. You call out someone's name and your voice bounces off the walls, reaching places you cannot see. Somewhere in that hall, the person hears you and begins walking toward you. You cannot see them yet, but you know they are coming because you called. That is what happens when you summon money. You may not see it immediately, but the call has been released and money, like a loyal companion, begins to move toward you. The Bible verse Florence often quoted comes alive here. "Ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened." The act of summoning is the act of asking with faith, not as a beggar, but as someone who knows they are worthy of receiving. When you speak directly to money and call it into your life, you align yourself with the truth that you are not destined for lack, but for flow, for abundance, for provision. There's a subtle but profound difference between wishing and summoning. Wishing says, "I hope money will come someday." Summoning says, "Money, come now. You belong with me." Wishing is weak, uncertain. Summoning is direct, powerful. And the universe responds to power, not weakness. If you've ever trained a pet, you know this instinctively. If you call a dog in a hesitant, unsure voice, "Come here maybe," it tilts its head, confused. But when you call with authority, "Come here now," it runs to you. Money recognizes the same tone. It obeys clarity. So I ask you, how have you been speaking to money? Have you been wishing it might show up one day, or have you been summoning it as if it were already yours? Have you been muttering curses under your breath, or have you been declaring blessings aloud? The difference is everything. Florence Shinn's rare prosperity secret was not complicated, but it was radical. Speak to money, summon it, call it as though it were alive. And in a way that cannot be explained by logic alone, it will hear and it will come. There is something ancient, almost mystical, about the way humanity has always spoken of wealth. Long before Florence Scovel Shinn revealed her prosperity teachings, long before the world turned money into plastic cards and digital numbers on screens, people understood that wealth had a spiritual dimension. It was never just gold, silver, or coins. It was power, provision, and possibility. And here's the fascinating thing. Throughout history, wealth was always summoned, never begged for. Kings declared it. Priests blessed it. Farmers prayed for it. The act of calling forth abundance was not seen as strange. It was natural. Think back to the great halls of ancient kingdoms. A ruler would sit on his throne, surrounded by advisors, soldiers, and subjects. When wealth was needed for a war, a feast, or the building of temples, the king did not whisper timidly. He declared. He summoned treasurers, he called forth caravans, he demanded gold and silver to flow into his coffers. His word carried power. because he believed that wealth responded to command. There was no doubt in his voice. There was no hesitation. His declaration carried authority, and that authority shaped reality. Florence Scovel saw the same principle in spiritual texts. The Bible says, "Ask and it shall be given, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened." Notice the clarity. It does not say, "Complain and it shall be given," or "Fear and it shall be given." It says ask. That word is so simple yet so easily overlooked. To ask is to speak directly by name with expectation. It is to declare that what you desire is already within reach. She recognized that when people grumble about lack, they are not asking, they are pushing away. When they speak words of fear, they are not summoning, they are scattering. But when they call with faith, when they summon with authority, wealth listens. I once heard a story about a small village long ago that was suffering from drought. The crops were withering, the animals weak, the people desperate. The elders gathered the villagers and said they would pray for rain. Everyone showed up the next morning, faces etched with worry, lips whispering silent pleas. But among the crowd was a little boy who carried something in his hands, a bright red umbrella. When asked why, he simply said, "Because if we are asking for rain, I expect it to come." That boy understood something many adults forget. Asking with faith means expecting the answer, not just hoping. Summoning wealth is the same. When you declare, "Money, come to me. You are welcome in my life," you do not whisper with doubt. You summon with the certainty of the boy carrying his umbrella. Florence often emphasized that words are creative forces. The authority in your declaration is not just psychological, it is spiritual. She believed that money is an expression of divine energy, and like all energy, it obeys the voice of faith. She would say things like, "Money is God in action." That means it is not meant to be feared or scorned but directed. Just as light flows where you shine it and water flows where you channel it, money flows where you call it with clarity. Imagine standing on the shore of an ocean. Waves roll in endlessly, one after another. You cannot stop them, you cannot control their existence, but you can choose how to meet them. If you build a channel, the water flows into it. If you build a dam, the water diverts away. Money is like that ocean wave, constant, abundant, endless. But whether it flows to you or away from you depends on the structure of your words, your beliefs, your declarations. And when you summon it, you are opening the channel. There's a story I remember of a woman who desperately needed funds to save her small business. She tried everything, marketing, borrowing, even cutting costs to the bone. Nothing seemed to work. Then, recalling Florence's teachings, she changed her approach. Instead of repeating, "I don't know how I'll make it," she began to declare, "Money comes to me easily and freely. Money is my supply. Money arrives in expected and unexpected ways." She spoke it aloud daily, sometimes trembling with fear but still summoning with authority. Within weeks, a former client reached out with a large order that carried her business through. She later said it felt as if the money had been circling around her all along, waiting for her to call it in. Why is authority so important in this process? Because authority removes doubt. Think of a parent calling their child inside at dusk. A half-hearted call, "Sweetheart, maybe come in if you want," might be ignored. But a firm, clear, "Come in now," cuts through hesitation and brings immediate response. Summoning wealth requires that same firmness. Not arrogance, not greed, but clarity. When you speak to money as if it already belongs in your life, it begins to move toward you because you've created space for it. We see echoes of this in so many traditions. In ancient Egypt, priests performed rituals where they declared abundance over harvests and offerings. In indigenous cultures, wealth was often spoken into being with chants, songs, and blessings. Even today, we see athletes, performers, and entrepreneurs using affirmations, visualizations, and bold declarations before success arrives. It is always the same principle. Summon with faith, declare with authority, and reality begins to shift. The challenge is that most of us were trained to do the opposite. We were trained to complain, to fear, to whisper about money in tones of anxiety. But history reminds us that abundance responds not to complaint but to command. When Florence said that money obeys the voice of faith, she was handing us back an ancient key, one that kings, prophets, and visionaries had always used. So the question becomes, how are you speaking? Are you declaring lack or summoning abundance? Are you whispering with doubt or commanding with authority? Money, like every form of energy, is listening. It is waiting for your voice, your faith, your clarity. And when you call it by name, when you summon it with the confidence of a king declaring his treasure, with the trust of a child carrying his umbrella to a prayer for rain, it cannot help but respond. It moves toward you, it flows through you, it circulates around you because that is the law of faith and declaration. Money obeys not fear, not complaint, not silence. It obeys the voice of faith. And the moment you discover that, the moment you dare to speak with authority, you begin to awaken an ancient secret that has been waiting within you all along. Picture yourself standing in the middle of a crowded train station at rush hour. The noise is overwhelming, voices overlapping, footsteps pounding, announcements crackling over the loudspeakers. Hundreds of people move in every direction, bags slung over shoulders, eyes glued to their phones. Now imagine you need to get the attention of someone you love in that sea of faces. If you shout, "Hey kid," your voice disappears into the chaos. A dozen children might turn or none at all. But the instant you call their name, clear, direct, unmistakable, they hear you. Their head turns, their eyes search, and suddenly the chaos fades because you cut through it with something only they recognize. Their name. That is the power of calling something by name. Money is caught in that same kind of chaos. Every day it is bombarded with noise. The noise of millions of people complaining about lack, muttering about bills, sighing over debt, cursing rising prices. All of those words float through the air like static, drowning each other out. But when someone steps forward and calls money directly, not with doubt but with clarity, "Money, you are welcome here. Money, you belong with me," it is like calling out a name in that crowded station. The noise parts and money hears you. It knows exactly where to go, exactly who is ready for it because you used its name. I once knew a woman who struggled financially for years, even though she worked hard and tried everything she knew. She told me that her thoughts about money were always tangled with fear. When she paid bills, she muttered things like, "Goodbye, money, I'll never see you again." When she saw people living comfortably, she whispered, "That's not for me." She thought she was being honest, but really she was adding to the noise, sending mixed signals that pushed money away. When she discovered Florence Shinn's teachings, she made a bold decision to change her language. She started saying, "Money, I see you. I call you into my life. You flow to me freely and I use you wisely." At first it felt awkward, like shouting into the void. But she persisted. Slowly she noticed small shifts. Unexpected discounts, surprise refunds, new freelance opportunities. It was as if money, hidden in the crowd, had finally heard her calling its name and was making its way toward her. Think of the child at the station again. If you yell, "Hey you," long enough, the child may remain lost in the crowd because they cannot tell you are speaking to them. But if you use their name, they run toward you. In the same way, general complaints about lack, "I need more money," "I wish I had enough," do not carry the clarity of a name. They are vague, muffled by the roar of fear and doubt that everyone else is shouting. But when you speak directly, when you call money as if it were alive, as if it were listening, you stand out from the crowd. Money hears your unique voice. Florence Shinn often emphasized that energy responds to direction. Money is energy, and energy always seeks clarity. Imagine electricity running through wires. If the wiring is tangled, the current short-circuits. If the wiring is clear and directed, the current flows powerfully and lights up the room. Your words are the wiring for money. When they are tangled with fear, anger, or doubt, money cannot find its way. But when they are clear, simple, direct, "Money, come here. Money, circulate through me with ease," the current flows. There's a man I once met who demonstrated this principle in a dramatic way. He had lost his job and felt utterly defeated. For weeks he repeated, "I don't know what to do. I'm drowning." Every day he poured more noise into the universe, noise that kept him stuck. Then, almost out of desperation, he decided to try summoning money by name. He woke up each morning and said aloud, "Money, I see you. You know where I am. Come to me now." He wrote it on sticky notes and placed them around his apartment. He whispered it while walking to the store. And though nothing seemed to happen at first, within a month a friend called to offer him a contract job that paid more than his previous position. A few weeks later, another opportunity opened that doubled his income. He told me later, "It was like money didn't even know I was here until I called it directly." The metaphor of the train station is powerful because it reveals what most people do not realize. Money is always present, always circulating, but most of us fail to cut through the noise. We whisper vague wishes instead of summoning with clarity. We speak in fear instead of calling with authority. And in doing so, we remain invisible to the very thing we desire. Consider another image. Imagine you are hosting a dinner at your home. Guests arrive and mingle in the living room. You want to speak to one specific person, but instead of calling their name, you mutter, "Somebody come here." Who responds? No one. Everyone assumes you are talking to someone else. But the moment you call, "John, come here," John looks up, recognizes his name, and walks toward you. Money works the same way. When you speak vaguely, "I need more," money does not know you mean it. But when you call, "Money, you belong here. I welcome you," it responds because you have spoken to it directly. Florence knew that most people were living in a fog of general complaints and vague wishes. She wanted to pull them into clarity. She wanted them to recognize that money is not cold or indifferent but responsive. And she taught that the simplest way to awaken that response was by speaking to it, by cutting through the noise with its name. She wrote affirmations like, "Money, you are my servant. You come when I call. You circulate in my life freely and joyfully." These were not just positive phrases. They were direct calls, like a mother calling her child at the station. And like a child who cannot resist their own name, money cannot resist a clear, faithful call. What I find most striking is that this principle is not about greed or desperation. It is about relationship. If money is energy, then treating it with respect, recognition, and welcome makes sense. Just as you would not ignore or insult a friend you wanted to keep, you should not ignore or curse money. Calling it by name is an act of relationship, of acknowledgement. It is saying, "I see you, I value you, I invite you." And that kind of clarity builds trust, even with something as mysterious as money. So the next time you feel lost in the noise of bills, stress, and worry, picture yourself in that crowded station again. See the chaos around you, hear the noise. Then imagine money standing somewhere in the distance, waiting to see if you will notice it. Don't whisper vaguely into the crowd. Don't sigh in hope. Call it. Say its name. Speak directly. Just as surely as a child lifts their head at the sound of their name, money will lift its head at the sound of yours. It will turn, it will move, it will find its way to you because you cut through the noise with the power of recognition. And when you do, you will discover what Florence Scovel Shinn knew all along. Money is listening. It always has been. It just needed you to call. Imagine a farmer walking through his fields at the start of spring. The soil is rich, the air is fresh, and the potential for abundance stretches out before him like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. In his hand he carries a bag of seeds. He could stand there all day, staring at the ground, wishing for crops to appear. He could complain that nothing is growing, that life is unfair, that others seem to harvest more than he ever could. But until he reaches into the bag, pulls out the seeds and places them into the earth, nothing will happen. The field will remain bare no matter how much he wants otherwise. It is only when he plants with faith, trusting that the unseen process of life will do its work, that the miracle of growth begins. And so it is with summoning money. Words are the seeds, faith is the soil, and consistent belief is the sunlight that brings the harvest to life. Florence Scovel Shinn knew this well when she said, "Words are instruments of power." She taught that the universe is responsive like that fertile field, but it only responds to what we plant. If we sow doubt, fear, and resentment, then scarcity is what grows. But if we plant faith-filled words, words that carry expectation and clarity, we cultivate prosperity. It is never enough to mutter once, "I want money," and then walk away with folded arms, watching to see if anything happens. That is like tossing a single seed into rocky soil and wondering why no harvest came. Instead, it is a practice. It is a steady rhythm of planting, watering, nurturing, and believing. I once knew a man who inherited a small piece of land. He had never farmed before, but he dreamed of growing a vineyard. His friends laughed at him, pointing out that the land was dry and the soil rocky. But every morning he walked the rows, clearing weeds, planting carefully, speaking aloud as if the vines could hear him. "You are growing. You are flourishing. You will yield abundance." For months there was nothing but bare earth. Yet he refused to give up. And then almost suddenly green shoots broke through. Years later, that vineyard produced award-winning wine. He once told me, "It wasn't just the planting. It was the faith that what I planted would take root." Summoning money works the same way. Faith is not hoping vaguely. It is planting with certainty that something unseen is already working on your behalf. Think about the power of words spoken with faith. Have you ever noticed how a child reacts when a parent says, "I believe in you"? Their posture changes. Their eyes light up. Something inside of them rises to meet that belief. Now imagine that money is listening to you in the same way. If you speak to it with fear, "I'll never have enough, it always leaves me," money turns away discouraged by your disbelief. But when you speak with conviction, "Money, I welcome you, I honor you, I believe you belong with me," money lifts its head encouraged by your faith. Just as the child responds to belief, money responds to certainty. There's a powerful story of a woman who was drowning in debt. Collection calls came daily, her fridge was nearly empty and she felt hopeless. She told me that every time she opened her wallet she felt shame. Then one evening she stumbled across Florence Shinn's words about faith. Something stirred in her, a tiny flame refusing to be extinguished. She decided to change the way she spoke to money. Every time she opened her wallet, instead of sighing, she said, "Money, I bless you. You are growing. You are multiplying." When she mailed checks for her bills, she whispered, "This money returns to me increased, multiplied, and blessed." At first nothing seemed different. But weeks later she received a job offer out of the blue. Soon after, a family member returned money she had long given up on. Slowly her finances shifted. She said it was like watering seeds in dry soil. One day nothing, the next day green shoots everywhere. What changed was not her circumstances first, but her faith in the words she planted. Faith is a living force. It is not a weak hope but a confident expectation. Think of the Wright brothers. When everyone else said man was not meant to fly, they persisted with a belief so strong that it defied the weight of gravity itself. They had no guarantee, no evidence at the start, yet they acted as if flight was already theirs. And because of that unwavering faith, the world took to the skies. Now ask yourself, if faith can overcome gravity, can it not also draw prosperity into your life? But faith is tested. Just as a farmer must wait through storms, dry days, and weeks of nothing but bare soil, you too will face silence after speaking your words. Doubt will creep in, whispering, "It isn't working." Friends may laugh, circumstances may look unchanged, but this is the critical moment. Will you pull the seed out of the ground to check if it is growing? Or will you water it faithfully, trusting the unseen process? Florence said, "Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly." That means you live, speak, and think as if your prosperity is already here, even if the evidence is not yet visible. Imagine walking into your home and speaking out loud, "Money, you live here. You circulate here. You flow here." Imagine paying for groceries and saying silently, "This money returns multiplied." Imagine seeing a bill and whispering, "This is already covered." Every word you speak is a seed. Every time you choose faith instead of fear, you are watering those seeds. And like that farmer, one day you will see a harvest where once there was only bare ground. There's another story, this one of a teacher who lived during the Great Depression. Her salary was meager, and her colleagues constantly complained about not having enough. But she did something different. Every payday she held her envelope of wages and said, "Money, you are always enough. You multiply in my hands." She tithed a portion, gave joyfully, and spoke words of abundance daily. People thought she was foolish. Yet somehow she never lacked. Groceries showed up at her door, unexpected gifts came, opportunities opened. She told her students, "It isn't about how much you have in your hand. It's about what you speak into it." And indeed, her faith turned meager wages into a flow that sustained her and those around her. Faith, then, is the bridge between your words and your reality. Without it, your words fall flat like seeds cast on stone. With it, your words take root, grow, and multiply. That is why Florence Shinn insisted on speaking as though you already possess the good you seek. Because in the unseen it already exists. Faith is the agreement with that unseen truth, and your words are the doorway through which it enters the visible. So when you summon money by name, do not do it weakly like a whisper lost in the wind. Do it with the voice of someone who knows their call is heard. Do it as the farmer plants seeds with certainty that growth will follow. Do it as the parent encourages a child with a belief so strong that it stirs a response. And when silence stretches on, when doubt presses in, do not dig up the seed. Keep watering with faith, for the harvest always comes. And when it does, you will look back and realize that it was your unwavering faith, your steady words, and your unshaken trust that called money out of the unseen and into your hands, just as surely as the seed breaks the soil and rises to meet the sun. And so, as you've journeyed through these powerful truths, remember this. The shift begins not in the world outside but within you. If you felt something awaken inside, don't let it fade. Carry it forward. Hit that subscribe button now, not because I asked, but because you owe it to yourself to keep feeding your mind with ideas that transform your reality. Like this video if it spoke to you and share your voice in the comments. Here's my question for you. What's the one belief about money or life you're ready to rewrite today?